Well, to find out what's new, let's start at the beginning. And as they say in the movie, it's a very good place to start. And the starting point for us is the startup screen. One of the most obvious changes is this list of project templates. If I go to the Application button and click on Options, and then File Locations, you'll see that we now have a list of templates. We can have up to 5 that display in the startup screen. Each user can reorder them, so they can have their most popular one at the top of the list. This may not seem like a great improvement, but it does mean, especially where you're working with multiple project templates, that you've got access to the ones that you use regularly. The next change is under Families. It's a link to Autodesk Seek. It opens a web browser and takes you directly to the Seek website. Resources have changed slightly as well. We've got links to what's new, to help. We've also got Exchange apps. Again, this opens a web browser, and the web browser takes us to the Autodesk's Apps Exchange. You can download free apps or purchase them. You also have the ability to access the Wiki Help community, so back to the internet. And here's the link to the community, where you can find help and ask people questions. Also new is the Mosaic community. Even more help, access to different products, and tutorial videos. But that's not all. Let's go back up to the Application button. The big change here is Options. The Options dialog box has gone through a big overhaul. We've still got the same items here, we just don't have the tabs across the top. We've got a list down the side. Under File Locations, we can also define our places for specific libraries that we want to use. Rendering settings, spell checking, the steering wheel's view cube, and whether we want macros enabled. Very similar, but in a different box. And finally, before we even get into a project, there's something else that's new. It's the Home tab. Only it's not called the Home tab anymore. It's called Systems. Autodesk are bringing their suite of products closer together. And this interface is the interface for Autodesk Revit, which is part of the Building Design Suite. Autodesk Revit, unlike Revit MEP, has all the tools available from the Revit range of products. So the Home tab has been banished, and we now have Systems, Architecture and Structure in Autodesk Revit. While back in Revit MEP, we have Systems and Architecture. If you do end up with the Building Design Suite, but your primary focus is on Revit MEP, you'll probably find the Systems tab comes second on your first install. You can move these tabs around. If I select the tab, press and hold my Control key, and then drag the tab, I can drag it to another position. So if Architecture is more important, then it can come first. Whilst I think that Systems coming at the front of the queue is much better. In previous versions of Revit, whether Revit Architecture, MEP or Structure, there were 4 base disciplines: Architectural, Coordination, Electrical, and Mechanical. New to Revit 2013 is a base discipline for plumbing. Well, what's the good of that, I can hear you say? Well, for the plumbers, for people who produce piping drawings, whether that's fire protection, whether it's hot and cold domestic hot water, whether it's sanitary layouts, the views for their drawings can now be separated from everybody else's. So the chilled water pipework necessary for mechanical layouts can still come as a sub-discipline under mechanical, but for the rest of the piping disciplines, they don't want to look at mechanical. They don't want to look at power. They don't want to look at electrical even. And they quite possibly don't want to look at architectural. And only every now and again, look at coordination. So now they can see their discipline by itself in the project browser. It cuts down on the number of views that you have to look at, and just generally makes everything easier for everybody. Although I've opened the sample MEP project located in your common folder, this process can be done with any Revit project file. View templates have existed for some time in Revit, but they've been enhanced in the 2013 version. They can be still accessed from the View tab and clicking on View Templates and Manage View Templates. The major difference to View Templates in this version is that they can now be persistent. That is, once you apply it to a view, it stays with the view. So if you want all your HVAC plans to look exactly the same, you can apply a view template and only manage the view template for all your views. I'll close the View Template dialog box and let's take a look at one of the views. Just as in previous releases, I can right-click and apply Template Properties, only this is slightly different to the previous versions. Applying the properties is just like applying the view template in previous versions. If I click on Apply, it changes the properties of the view, but the view template doesn't persist with this view. If I want this behavior to be persistent, from the Properties palette, I can scroll down until I find View Template. In previous versions, this was the default view template. You can see here it's set to None. So if I click on this button and select the mechanical plan, you can now see that I can apply this view template to the view. If I click on OK, we can now see that the mechanical plan view template is assigned to this view. What this means is from Visibility Graphics, I can now no longer change how this view reacts in Visibility Graphics. This also applies to the scale, the level of detail, and shading. In fact, everything that's controlled in the view template. You can see here, if I scroll down to Mechanical Plan, there are only a few boxes unchecked for which we can go and change, or that aren't related to the view template. So I can now select multiple views, assign a view template to those views, and if I go back and have a look or manage the view templates and scroll back down to Mechanical Plan, we can see that we've got 10 views assigned to this template. So any changes I make with regards to visibility will be reflected in all of those views. So this process will make managing projects a lot easier than it has been in previous releases. You're going to be able to manage your views and have more consistent documentation with this updated tool. The enhancements that have been made here gives us a better interaction with people who are using Bentley products like MicroStation. Back in the sample MEP project, I'll go up to the Application button and select Export. And at the bottom of the box, scroll down until I find the options for the export setups for DGN. Here we can specify our categories and the levels and color ID for the resultant DGN file. We can use standards that have been predefined, or we can load settings from a file. So if your collaborative partner has their own set of standards, they can easily be used. We can export category properties by level and overrides by element, or we can export all properties by level, but do not export the overrides. And additionally, export all properties by level and create new levels for overrides. All this should be discussed with your collaborative partner before sending them the resulting DGN. We can map our line patterns, our line weights, hatch patterns, text and fonts, colours, and new to Revit MEP 2013 is the ability to specify seed files for version 8 metric, version 8 imperial, and version 7 metric or imperial. Under General, we have default export options. Do we want to export views on sheets and links as references, and the default file format that we want to export to? So clicking on Export and Export DGN, we have a very similar export dialog box as we have for AutoCAD files. We can export the current sheet or view and create our own setups. Clicking on Next will then give us the file name that we want to export to, and a dialog to select the folder we want to export to. This new ability to export to version 8 gives us a lot more flexibility when working with our collaborative partners. Improvements have been made when linking or importing AutoCAD DWG files. From the Insert tab, click on Link CAD. The small improvement that's been made is this ability to correct lines that are slightly off axis. This means that lines that are slightly out of true, around about 0.1 of a degree, can be automatically straightened. You should use this with caution, however, as landscaping drawings always have lines that are off axis, and even if it's a wall, it may be by design. So always check with the original designer first before allowing Revit to do anything automatically for you. In addition to the import enhancements, there are also export enhancements. From the Application button, click on Export, CAD Formats, DWG. We have the Select Export Setup, and we're going to modify the export setup. The enhancements to this is under the General tab. Here we have the additional options to hide scope boxes, reference planes, and unreferenced view tags. This new option just brings us up to date with what we can also do when we're printing drawings. There have been a few enhancements to the dimensioning tool. Let's take a look in the sample MEP project. I'm zoomed into the north area of Level 1 lighting plan, and I've got several dimensions here that all show the equality symbol. With my cursor hovering over one of the dimension lines, I can press the Tab key. This now selects one of the dimensions in that string. I can select it and delete it. This means you no longer have to redo an entire dimension string because one part of it is incorrect, and you really don't want to fiddle with modifying the witness lines. The next enhancement is to do with the equality text. We can now place a formula into this string that allows us to see the spacing, the number, and the total length. To do that, let's select one of those dimension strings, and from the Properties palette, click on Edit Type. The very first thing I do here is duplicate the type and give it a suitable name. Let's say this is total length, and click on OK. Scroll down to the bottom to the other parameters. Here you can see we've now got new fields. I've got an equality formula, which is currently set to total length. Let's take a look at this. Here I want to place the number of segments, and I'll stick that at the top. I also have length of segment, which I'll place second, and I'll put some additional text in here. Number of segments at length of segment equals total length. Let's put a space at the end of that as well. Click on OK. And down here we'll also say that I don't need to see the equality witness displays. And click on OK again. But that hasn't changed my dimensions. I still need to come to my Properties palette and change the equality display to equality formula. This now shows the three spacings and the equality dimension followed by the total length. And finally, the latest addition to the Annotate Dimension tool is the ability to create a diameter dimension. To see that in action, scroll into an area and create a detail line. Here we can create a circle. And previously, we would have just been able to create a radial dimension. Here, we can also create a diameter dimension. Select the circle and place the dimension. We can also use it on cable tray and duct bends if we wanted to know the diameter of that bend, or the diameter of a column that's in a linked file. There are some things that you just can't live without, and in some parts of the world, they like their diameter symbol up front. This is now simplicity itself. Go to the Systems tab, click on Mechanical, open up the Mechanical Settings dialog box, click on Pipe Settings, and we can now take the pipe size suffix and put it as a prefix. Click on OK. So if you'd spent hours massaging your families so they look correct, you don't have to worry about it anymore. The other thing that you may well not have been able to do without is loop leaders. And apparently there are enough of you out there who think that loop leaders are so sexy that they're now included in Revit MEP. The first thing I need to do is go to the Manage tab and select Additional Settings. Under here I can access arrowheads. I need to duplicate a current arrowhead, and let's call this one Loop 5mm. Click on OK. The arrow style, there's now a loop included, so we can give that a size, 5mm. Click on OK. That doesn't update all my leaders. I now need to come to my tag, edit the type, and change the leader arrowhead to my newly created loop 5mm. How did I ever do without that one? But hey, it didn't do it before. That's fantastic. And it's great that Autodesk are listening to their customers. When little things like this get fixed, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's been some major work underway. That's my opinion anyway. In previous versions of Revit MEP, you had to create a duct or pipe type to suit all instances of the types of runs you were creating. So, for example, if your pipe had a specific fitting for a material at sizes 16 to 40mm, and then another fitting from 50 to 100mm, you'd have to have two different pipe types. In Revit MEP 2013, this is handled by segment. Let's take a look at that. Here I've created a new project using one of the default templates. Selecting the Duct tool, I can select my different types, just as I could do in previous releases. But let's see what happens under Edit Type. We have a similar Type Properties palette, but we now have the ability to edit routing preferences. For ducts, this is pretty similar to previous releases, although when we look at a junction, we can specify what the junction is. If our preferred junction type is a T, then we can use the T option for junction. If the appropriate families aren't loaded into the project, we can load family. This is similar for pipes. Go back to the Systems tab and click on Pipe. In the standard template, we have two pipe types, standard and plastic. Let's edit this type. You can see that we have the routing preferences here, and if I click on Edit, we now have segments and sizes. Here we have a pipe segment that goes from 10 to 150, with a plain elbow. For standard pipework, we have the same, the pipe segment and its type of elbow. What we can do in here is add a pipe segment and change these sizes. So we could say from 6 to 35, we have one type of set of fittings. We can do the same for elbows, 6 to 35, and then add another type of elbow. We don't currently have one loaded, so let's load one from the standard library. I'll browse to pipe fittings, and for this example, we'll just choose an elbow. This threaded elbow can then be used for other sizes, let's say 42 to 159, and so on. So let's try that in plan. I'll draw a standard pipe type at 12 millimeters, which we can't currently see. Let's change the visibility graphics so that we don't have any filters applied for piping. Switch to fine level of detail. Click on fine lines. We can now see our pipe. Let's run the pipe tool again. This time we'll change our size to 100 mm. If I draw the pipe and click on modify, although we have the same pipe type as standard, the bends are different families. Here we've got the threaded, and top left, the first one, is the soldered. So whether you're laying out ductwork or pipe work, and they have different uses, like fire-rated ducts, or pipes for chilled water or sanitary, we can control the fittings even though we're using the same types. For this exercise, at your startup screen, click on Open, browse to the Common folder, and open the file Sample MEP Project. As diligent as you may be during the design process, some things may get changed accidentally. Let's take a look at what that means in the project environment. From the project browser, scroll down and open up Level 2 Piping Plan, and zoom into the north area of the project. Here we can see some pipe work, and if I select one of these pipes and edit the type, you can see that under Routing Preferences, we have a generic standard elbow for this pipe type. Yet I can see in the drawing that I've got a bend that isn't the correct bend. I've also got T's that aren't the correct T's for this type of pipe. In previous versions, you'd have had to have sorted through your entire layout to correct this. New to Revit MEP 2013 is the ability to tab and select your pipe run, which I know isn't a new tool, but now from the Contextual tab, we have the ability to reapply type. This means that any bends or tees or fittings that are not in the pipe type will get exchanged for ones that should be there. Of course, you can still come up with error messages, and these would need to be fixed as before. But this is a big step up in the ability to track the fittings and accessories on a pipe run. From the Common folder, open the file Sample MEP Project. In the project browser, scroll down and make sure that you have the Level 2 HVAC plan open. Let's scroll into the north part of the building. The ability to do pressure loss calculations has been available in Revit MEP for some time. There has been a problem with this tool though. Introduce ducts with taps into a system and the calculations didn't really work, so this has been fixed for 2013. If I hover over a system and press the tab key until I select the system, then left click to select, I now get the system inspector come up as I did in previous releases. I now get another toolbar appear on the screen and I can click on Inspect, and this will show me the correct pressure loss for each part of the system. This new tool can also be combined with one of the new analysis tools. We now have the ability to do duct and pipe pressure loss reports. Here you can see all the available systems. Revit tells you that only the systems with calculation set to all are listed, and we can select as few or as many as we like. Click on OK. We can choose whether the critical path is displayed. I can get the option to save this report format and then generate the report. This saves the file as an HTML file. I can browse to my project folder and save the report, click on Save, and then review the report in my web browser. I can look at this by section, by segment, and fitting and accessory loss, and use this to review the project. A more graphical way to look at how the system is working is to use the Duct colour fill legend. This has also been updated in 2013 so that you can visualise the flow through any duct run and throughout the different segments in that run. So from the Analyze tab, click on Duct Legend and place the legend on the screen. We're going to use the colour scheme Duct Colour Fill. Click on OK. And this now shows us the different flows across the different systems, allowing us to quickly visualise the results. The guys at Autodesk have been really busy this year, and there are yet 2 more enhancements to the Duct tools. For this exercise, you can carry on with the sample MEP project located in the Common folder. Revit 2013 uses the latest version of the ASHRAE duct fitting database, 5.00.00. This means that if you're using Revit to design your systems and you need to account for loss through duct fittings for all your pressure loss calculations, then you can be confident that the fittings now reflect the ASHRAE database. If I select a fitting and we look at the Properties palette, we can see that the loss method has been selected as the coefficient from table, and it automatically picks up the ASHRAE table that needs to be used for the calculation. And finally in this section, MEP centre lines. That may not sound a big thing. After all, in visibility graphics, we've had centre lines for ducts and pipes since Revit's been around. The only issue has been that to display the centre line, we'd need to change the view to wireframe, and then we'd have centre lines for rectangular ducts, and that just doesn't work. We could have put a filter in place, but again, the duct is then transparent and it doesn't show accurately on our drawings. So the answer is MEP centre lines. If I go to the Systems tab and create a duct, set my duct to rectangular. Here I'm not too worried about sizes, but I'll draw my duct. We have no centre lines showing, but if I change my duct to a round duct and carry on the run, the duct now shows the centre line. Of course, I have heard the argument that we just don't need to see centre lines in our drawings. Well, that's easy. Go to Visibility Graphics from your View tab and just turn off duct centre lines. Now they don't display at all, apart from the round bend, where I need to turn the centre line off in the fittings as well. Up until this release, there has been an issue with air terminals and with light fittings. If the connector or the light source is actually outside the room or the space, the results on your analysis can be incorrect. In Revit MEP 2013, this has been corrected. Let's take a look at this by opening up the sample MEP project located in your Common folder. In your project browser, scroll down and make sure that you have open Level 3 HVAC Plan. From the Quick Access toolbar, select Section and draw a section through the building. What we'll do here is double-click on the section head, and this takes us to the section through the building. I'm just going to change my level of detail to medium and apply an HVAC section. So what we have in here is an air terminal. This air terminal has been placed with an offset from level 2, and there's every chance that it could be sat in the middle of the ceiling because it's an unhosted element. As we can see here, the connector is on top of the diffuser, so the airflow coming into the space below won't be properly registered. Let's take this chance to edit the family. With the family open, on the Properties palette, I can click on the Room Calculation Point checkbox. Let's look at the front of this 3D view. This green dot is the room calculation point. So we can see here that my calculating point is currently up in the ceiling void. What I want to do here is just drag this far enough below so that Revit now has this point through which the calculation will be made. I can load this into my project. We'll load it into the sample MEP project and overwrite the existing version and its parameter values. Selecting the fitting now shows the room calculation point, and any of the analysis that we've done will be correctly reported. The exact same process can be used for light fittings.